Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Chatham Select Board meeting of March 28th, 2023. Let the record show that the meeting started promptly at 5:31 p.m. Pursuant to Governor Baker's July 16th, 2022 signing of an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, including the extension of his March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 20, until March 31st, 2023, this meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access, and we will post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as is possible. First order of business this evening is to see if we've got a quorum here or not. Mr. Metters?
Present.
Mr. Shell?
Present.
Ms. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Nicastro?
Present.
And Mr. Dykens is present as well. Second item of business is to adopt the minutes of March 28, 2023. A motion?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, in a couple of seconds. And we have one hand up, Mr. Nicastro.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, on page 7, about two-thirds of the way down in the middle paragraph that is headed with the word motion, in the third line, after the number 10,667,944, I'd like to put a comma and add the following, and the amended motion was seconded by Select Board Member Shell. I didn't check the tape on that, Shauna, but I believe that's what happened.
I think that was the case, Mr. Nicastro, yes. Anything else, Dean? No. Anything else? Mr.
Yes,
Shell.
sir.
Mr. Shell.
I have two. The first is on page 2. In the big paragraph, the next to the last paragraph begins Town Manager Goldsmith, the first one that begins that way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines up from the bottom. Over on the right, it says, felt comfortable with. I would strike felt comfortable with and insert decides to include.
Okay.
And then on page 4, I have two. In the carryover paragraph at the top, I would strike in the next to the last line, beginning with postulated, I would strike the rest of that line, and the next line all the way to between, and I would insert noted the cost estimates presented to the board in August for 3 alternative site configurations, period. He said these estimates suggested the cost of building at any of the sites discussed for the new center would likely range and then pick up between 10 million and 11 million. And then in the next paragraph, last line, after the word asset and before that, I would insert with value. And then at the end of that line where it says or gotten rid of, I would change gotten rid of to sold.
Good.
That's all I have.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, we have a motion and a second with the edits. Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nicastro?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Next item on our agenda this evening are public announcements and/or agenda item requests. I'll turn to the Select Board first for agenda item. I believe Serene Davis has one. Ms. Davis.
Thanks, Jeff. The
Today, we got a couple of correspondences from the Community Housing Partnership in relationship to some feedback from her committee on housing outreach and communication strategies, as that may include a survey. I wanted to note that it might be best served if we invite the chair and the committee here to talk about what they're looking at, and then in our discussion, go forward with any agenda items that might come out of that.
Super.
Okay.
So noted. Good idea. Okay, anybody else on the select board? Any folks from the public with agenda item requests and/or announcements? Alex, please, and then I see that Justin Tavano and a guest has hands raised already.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, as you might well know, tax bills were mailed last Friday.
Oh, come on, Alex, jeez.
The happy announcement that I make twice a year, yes, tax bills are mailed, and then that they'll be due on May 1st. So tax bills were mailed last Friday. If you did not get one or do not get one this week, please contact the Treasurer's Office. A couple of notes on that. There was a remittance envelope included in the mailing with the tax bill. Our printer, the vendor that we use, the printer included that. We did not instruct and we normally do not have a remittance envelope with the tax bill. So that was included. And unfortunately, if you try to mail your tax bill back in that envelope, it does not fit. So we are recommending that you can repurpose that envelope for whatever you'd like, or if you'd like to drop it off at 549, but do not use it in the mail because there is a likelihood it will not get to us. And we're trying to avoid that. We want to make sure everyone gets their taxes paid on time. And there are different ways to pay your taxes. You can go online and pay your taxes through the City Hall systems on the Town Hall website. That's free of charge for an ACH transaction where it comes from your bank account. If you can use a credit card, they do charge a convenience fee that will be added on. You can drop it off, as I said, at the drop box at 549 Main Street, or you can mail in your payment using your own envelope to 549, please. And again, mail a check, no cash. Cash will be accepted at Town Hall, though, offices, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4, if that is the way that you prefer to pay. And then another issue with the tax bills was that we did include the sticker notification for the beach and transfer stickers. Unfortunately, the date that comes online is April 1st, so we suggest the public wait to try to order those stickers if you're ordering them through the City Hall systems until Monday. So that way we know that will be up and running, because usually what happens is that the statutory date to send out the tax bills is April 1st. We just got ahead of the game a little bit, so that's not available until April 1st. Also included with the tax bills is the paper application for mail-in if you'd like to mail in your stickers for beach and transfer station. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Alex? Thank you, Alex, twice a year.
Thank you.
Any other announcements? I see we have hands raised online here. Chief Tavano, Justin Tavano.
Yes, good evening, everybody.
You're on mute, Justin.
I am speaking on behalf of the fire department. A couple of quick announcements
Justin,
to make.
you're on mute. There
I
you
just
go. Yep. We just,
sorry about that.
We just started to hear you. Go ahead.
There's a little delay for some reason. Sorry.
Yeah.
Bono Fire Chief. I am a Harwich resident speaking on behalf of the fire department. Just a couple quick announcements to make. I just wanted to acknowledge the exceptional career of EMS Captain Mark Heller. Mark retires this Friday after about 43 years of service in the emergency medical services, with about 20 years of service to the town of Chatham. Mark he'll be sorely missed at the fire department. We are having a last coffee celebration for him from 8 to 10 on Thursday morning. It's open to the public. We'll have coffee and refreshments, and it's really informal, just an opportunity for people to come by and wish Mark well in his retirement. And secondly, Saturday, despite the unfavorable forecast, we will be hosting our annual April Fool's Swim at Hardings Beach, and we will be taking to the water at 11:30 a.m. with a barbecue at the VFW following. And we'll be swimming this year on behalf of one of our own firefighters, Vance Bates. Vance has had a cancer diagnosis this year, and in the course of his treatment, his wife Adrienne suffered a stroke. So she's out of work he's been out of work for a little while. So we support any support the public can offer. We greatly appreciate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chief. Thank you. Elaine Gibbs is a guest. Elaine.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was looking at the packet with future agenda items through the end of April, and I don't see that Eversource and Verizon have been scheduled yet. And I was wondering what the update is on that, because the last poll fell on March 3rd.
Yeah, I don't have an update tonight. Maybe Jill does. Do you have any idea when they're coming in, Jill? I know you've reached out.
They're working on scheduling, and we have an internal meeting on Thursday with DPW, fire, police, as well as Ellen Cummings from Verizon and Ron Neat from Eversource. So I'm hoping at that time they'll give me a date for when they and other members that were requested can appear before the board.
Super. Thank you, Jill. Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I have just
Jill,
Thank you.
please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to announce that the transfer station is going to be closed on Easter Sunday, and that's April 9th. So the transfer station will be closed on Easter Sunday. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for the heads up. Anything else? Okay. On to our main agenda here. The first item we have is a public hearing related to an all-alcoholic beverages liquor license, Backpack Forever LLC, doing business as Apalea Kitchen and Tiki Bar, 483 Main Street. Tom Deegan, manager, a familiar face here, and I'll have our clerk, Mr. Shell, read the public hearing notice, please.
Notice is hereby given that the Chatham Select Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, March 28, 2023, at 5:30 PM in the large meeting room of the town office, Annex 261 George Ryder Road, to consider a request for a new seasonal all-alcoholic beverages restaurant license for Backpack Forever LLC, doing business as Apalea Kitchen and Tiki Bar. Tom Deegan, manager, 483 Main Street, Chatham, Massachusetts, 02633. All interested parties are encouraged to participate. Signed, the Select Board.
Thank you, Mr. Shell. Mr. Deegan, welcome. Nice to see you again. Why don't you
Thank you,
tell us
likewise.
Why don't you tell us
Good
what you're
evening.
up to here?
Yeah, Tom Deegan, resident of North Chatham. And unfortunately, my wife couldn't be here this evening. Apalea will be Filipino-inspired cuisine with a tiki bar. Pelinda, my wife, is obviously Filipina. And the inspiration for the concept downtown, and we've been testing the concept over the last few months as a pop-up in our restaurant at Mom and Pop's. And it really just started as something fun for her to do and working with our chefs, and it was an opportunity. We were closed on Wednesdays to just get open and try this, and it's something new and different in this area, and it is a cuisine that is growing. Certainly it's, on the West Coast, there's a lot of Filipino food, but in this area more so. But we will be the first Filipino restaurant on Cape Cod, and we're very proud of that. And so we will be taking over what was the Blue Coral space in downtown, and it's an outdoor space. So with that, we are looking to have a seasonal all-alcohol license. Okay. And with that, we'd also, the timing of it, we'd like to have it all available hours, including, I guess, the earliest time on Sundays was 10 a.m.
Okay,
Or
thank you, Tom. Yeah. Questions for Tom or comments? Mr. Nicastro and then Ms. Davis.
Thank you. I appreciate your going into that location. I just had a couple of questions. I mean, the filing seems to be in order, but a couple of things I saw. First of all, is this going to be open year-round? Is that your plan?
No, it's seasonal.
Seasonal, okay.
No, unfortunately, with the space being an
because of
outdoor
it's
space.
outdoors,
Yeah.
you can't. On page 4 of your application, and you may not have in front of you, this just asks this is the financial disclosure. It asks the source of the cash contribution, and there are two numbers that seem to conflict. Shauna, it says 125,000, but then the total is listed as 150. Is that just an error?
I'd have to look at it again. But basically, if the total source of all of the investment into the business is coming from our current business.
Yeah, well, you may want to check with Shauna afterward about
Sure.
that one. And the only other question I had, so you're going to be the manager of the new location. And is your wife the manager at the other location, or are you? How is that, how are you
No,
gonna divide up your time?
so she is, we have a general manager at our other location, a full-time general manager.
Okay.
I'll be splitting time between the two. Our head chef, who, you know, also has a stake in our business, will be kind of splitting time between the two, but we'll be bouncing between the two. And my wife, when she's able to, will be downtown as
Okay,
well.
last question, is any significance to the name?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you asked. So it's a playa, in Tagalog, the native language of the Philippines means beach or
okay.
coast. So
Okay.
we thought that fitting for our space here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Davis?
Hi, Tom, and
Hi.
congratulations on expanding your business.
Thank you.
So it's all outdoor dining, and it looks like it's 68 seats.
Yeah.
And how many people do you think you'll be employing over the summer?
It's a good question, because we are playing around with different models of service. You know, I think everyone has seen over the last 3 years, service models in restaurants changing. And you know, largely due to the trouble finding staff being, you know, part of it, trying to get creative around that. And we have a couple of options available to us, which might help ease with the staffing model. But probably on any given shift, there would be, you know, probably 4 in the kitchen, 2 bartenders, 2 more people kind of running and bussing. And then we have a model, we're really seriously considering it. It's called, through our POS, it's a mobile app. I think it's called mobile app and pay through Toast. But anyway, you're able to scan and order food directly from your seats, so you don't need as many servers doing this, and people would go up directly to the bar to order directly from the bartenders. So, you know, any given shift could have, say, 12 to 15 could potentially be that, and if it's more of a full service, it could be upwards of 10, approximately 20.
Great, thank you. I'm very supportive of this. I love the idea that we're having more diverse restaurants in town, and I appreciate your concept very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Any other comments? I've got a couple. Blue corals in each spot.
Yeah.
It's kind of intimate and back there. It is outside, so you're gonna have to deal maybe with elements once in a while. You're gonna have tents or coverings or anything, or?
Yeah, so there was always a covering
Covering, yeah,
over
okay.
at least part of the space.
Yeah.
So it's interesting because it's a canvas, and it hadn't been used in a couple of years, and trying to clean it was,
Yeah.
you know, how are we going to do this? And I thought, well, it's a canvas. It's like basically a boat sail. So we went to Chatham Boat, and they had a connection. We had to ship it out, and we're having it cleaned by basically a company that cleans sails for boats. So that will be covered. Yeah, the weather obviously is a challenge. If it's a summer like last summer, it's awesome. If
Good
it's
to
not.
go, yeah.
But we also, I think, you know, service models again have changed over the last few years, obviously, and we don't plan on really doing online ordering because it's just not a great space for that. But there is also the option for that if weather is a challenge.
I assume that, you know, you're dipping your toe in the water with this model, that the pop-up Filipino food at Mom and Pop's has been successful.
Yeah,
So, okay.
it's great.
Yeah,
And,
good.
you know, what they've come up with, you know, with Pelinda in the kitchen, the food's outstanding.
Excellent.
And I do think, and we are hearing that people are really looking for something different. And I think with Filipino food particularly, there are a lot of people that, you know, either know a Filipino or a lot of service people that actually served in the Philippines, and there's a connection to the food and a familiarity to it. So people are coming in with their stories, and Pelinda's working those nights, and she's really like I said, the inspiration in the face of this.
Well, Mom and Pop's has been a great addition to town, and I wish you well with this one. Now, we share a background here, although we didn't overlap in years. You were 19 years at Deloitte?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I never would have thunk it when you were at the podium.
Yeah, I did
Anyway.
13 in New York,
Oh, yeah.
and then San Francisco, and
Yeah,
then, yeah.
okay. And you left.
And I did, yeah,
Okay.
and chose an easy life of restaurants. So.
Frying pan to the fire. Anyway, Tom,
it.
good luck. I think it looks
Thank you.
great. It really does. So.
Thank you.
A motion, please. I'm sorry, public hearing. I always do that on these public hearings. Any comments from the public, either in person and/or online, for this application by Mr. Deegan? I see none, Mr. Deegan, so I will turn to the board for a motion and a vote. A motion, please. Mr. DeCastro.
I move we approve the application for new seasonal alcohol, all alcoholic beverages liquor license for Backpack Forever LLC, doing business as Apply a Kitchen and Tiki Bar, 483 Main Street, with Mr. Deegan as the manager.
Second.
Super. Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Thank you very much, Mr. Deegan. Good
Thank you
luck.
very much.
Good luck. Go
Thank
get
you.
him. All right, Mr. Shell, you have another public hearing to read.
Okay. Notice is hereby given that the Chatham Select Board will hold a public hearing on Tuesday, March 28th, 2023, at 5:30 PM in the large meeting room at the Town Office Annex, 261 George Ryder Road, Chatham, and remotely via Microsoft Teams platform to consider a request for a change of manager to the seasonal all-alcoholic beverages restaurant license for TPJ Chatham Group LLC, doing business as the Chatham Cut, from Alberto Tumiati to Lauren Underwood. All interested parties are encouraged to participate. Sign the Select Board.
Thank you, Mr. Shell. This is a change of manager request. Is anybody from Chatham Cut or TPJ Chatham Group LLC or Lauren Underwood here or online? Okay, Shauna, maybe you can fill in some information for us. I know that we got a good package, but this is just a change of manager.
Just a change of manager, fairly routine in the service industry to have change of employees, and this is simply to, my understanding is bring Lauren on as the manager of the restaurant while Alberto focuses on the new inn owned by the same corporation.
Okay. Any questions for Shauna and/or anything about this matter? Okay, this issue. We have a public hearing. I was reminded earlier. Anybody from the public would like to comment on this application, either in present and/or online? I see no hands raised or any hands raised here either. So, Mr. Nacastro.
Mr. Chairman, I approve the application for change of manager to seasonal all alcoholic beverages liquor license TPJ Chatham Group LLC, doing business as the Chatham Cut, 1200 Main Street, Lauren Underwood as the manager.
In a second.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Metters. Okay, Mr. Metters.
Aye.
Mr. Shell.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. So that matter is closed. Thank you very much. On to our public comments on our business agenda. On our on our business agenda this evening. On our business agenda this evening, we have consideration of request for a special one-day all-alcoholic beverage permits by the Creative Arts Center, a bunch of dates. A update from Randy Potash, our Chatham Assembly delegate, on the business at the Barnstable County. An update from her, and then an update from Christy Senatori from the Cape Cod Commission. Welcome. And then support SD 1040. This is by Ms. Davis. A discussion on the right to impose year-round occupancy restrictions and the draft a town adoption of this imposition of a year-round occupancy restriction. So there'll be discussion under a business agenda. Is there anybody online and/or here that would like to comment on any of those? It's hard to comment on Barnstable County and Cape Cod Commission because we don't know quite what they're going to say yet, but I'm sure it'll be both enlightening updates. But anything on our one-day alcohol permits and/or the right to impose year-round occupancy restrictions? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, we're going to go right to our agenda. First item, consider request for special one-day all-alcoholic beverage permits at the Creative Arts Center, 154 Crowell Road. There's a bunch of different dates. We have April 6th, May 7th, June 4th, July 16th, July 26th, September 10th, and October 15th. These are little wine parties when they have an art gallery opening. We bunch them up like this so that we can kind of get through them all at one time rather than coming back singly again and again and again. So, Shauna, do we have anybody here from, there's Angela. Angela, I'll recognize you if you're online there. Angela Zoni-Malt from the Creative Arts Center. Any comments, Angela? Okay, none? Okay, she's frozen. Shauna, any issues? This is something we've approved year in and year out.
These are annual requests.
Annual requests.
The Sunday dates are all artist receptions at the Creative Arts Center. The Wednesday date is their annual fundraiser at a private residence on Old Harbor Road.
Okay, motion, please.
This is all,
Please.
Oh, go ahead.
this is all pretty standard.
Yep.
I move to approve the center, Creative Arts Center, 7 one-day special permits for all alcohol beverage for Sunday, April 16th, 2023, from 4 to 6 p.m. at 154 Kroll Road. Sunday, May 7th, 2023, from 4 to 6 p.m. at the same. Sunday, June 4th, 2023, from 4 to 6 p.m. at the same. Sunday, July 16th, 2023, from 4 to 6 p.m. at the same. Wednesday, July 26th, 2023, from 6 to 8:30 at 30 Old Harbor Road, Chatham. And Sunday, September 10th, 2023, from 4 to 6 at 154 Kroll Road, Chatham. Sunday, October 15th, 2023, from 4 to 6 p.m. at 154 Kroll Road, Chatham.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? None. Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
The chair says aye as well. Have fun. Okay. Good luck, Creative Arts Center. All right, the next update we have is from Randy Potash, our Chatham delegate to Barnstable County Assembly. Randy, it's wonderful to see you again.
Oh, it's great to see you.
Looking forward to your update. You guys have been busy down there in the county.
Yeah, I'm here to enlighten you.
Super.
Yeah. So,
Bring it on.
All right, so I'm happy to be here. I've been looking forward to it, and I do have some interesting materials to go over with you. I want to just say, just for the benefit of the public, that the Assembly is unique. There are some county governments that have survived in Massachusetts, and ours is the only one with an Assembly of Delegates. And the Assembly of Delegates, basically, for all intents and purposes, we have the last say on the budget. So we talk about money a lot at the Assembly. So the 3 topics I wanted to go over tonight was, one, to give you an update on how the $40 million in ARPA funds was allocated. And then I want to spend a little bit of time on the amount, that $12.8 million was allocated for county projects, and some of those will have a lot of relevance to the town of Chatham, so I want to go through those with you. And then number 2, give you a little bit of an update on our present budget and some issues that we're having now, just so you can hear it from me first. And some of that will relate to Chatham, and I've gotten some great input from some of the employees, and I'll tell you about that in a minute. And then number 3, we'll go over the dredge and a little status as to that. And then I'm happy to try to take any questions, but if they're too technical with some of these projects, I'll ask that you have some of the subject matter experts come back maybe at another point and explain some of those. They could come back either in person or online, or if you have specific questions, you could always get them to me and I could try to get you answers. But you might want to hear from the subject matter experts on all these projects. All right, so as to the projects, $40 million, 10 went to the towns, as you may recall. I was an advocate for 20 million to go to the towns, but that did not work out. So 10 went to the towns, and Chatham's allocation for that is $345,000, and you haven't extracted that yet, but I know you will, and I urge you to do it soon so they can get off my back, because it's only been Brewster and Chatham that hasn't done that yet. But it's not too late. You got an email, I shared that with you, and you know what to do, and I'm sure you'll do it, and I wish it were more. So that's 10. About over $11 million was allocated for housing projects throughout the region. Most importantly, I'd say, is $6.9 million went to gap funding for any affordable housing projects that are underway that have had a stopgap for whatever reason. That could possibly apply to some of the projects you have in the works, but the rules haven't been set yet. There's going to be an RFP out, over the next couple of months, and you'll be able to see. I don't think so, but it's possible. But at least you'll see that a lot of housing projects will be underway, and that's for about a little over $11 million. Next, there's been $5 million allocated to small businesses, and it's a competitive process, and the winners, so to speak, have not been announced yet, but they went through some hoops, and there were a lot of applicants, so that's 5. And then lastly, 12.8 million was allocated for county projects. And the county projects are gonna be of benefit to towns and citizens. PFAS is one of the allocations. PFAS wasn't, but a machine to measure and to test for PFAS in municipal water and well water is going to be underway by this summer, I believe. That was in the capital budget, and so that's kind of exciting for the health department to be able to offer that. And then the rest of the projects, there's a bunch, and I'll just go over them, and I'll try to point out the ones that I think you might think the most interesting. $1 million was allocated for digitalization of county records, so if you have any questions, once this is done, then you'll be able to go online and see older documents, or if the public wants to access the website. It's gonna take a while. $1 million for that, if you think that sounds like a lot, so do I. But that was one. And then there's $4 million that was allocated to clean up the fire training place in Barnstable where PFAS has been polluted, caused pollution from the foam. And so that's 4 million of it. And that's like an endless money pit, unfortunately, to clean that up. Then there's $257,000 for a coordinator to combine county departments with regional, state, and federal stakeholders when it comes to water policies. And then the same type of initiative for housing, just basically to try to coordinate those efforts. I'll try to get more interesting soon. Then back to the health and environment, there's $829,000 for a PFAS identification and analysis project. So what that is they're gonna coordinate with all the 15 towns and try to figure out by historic records where PFAS might likely be. So I thought that was something to definitely point out as be on the lookout. All right, let's see. Then there's the MassTC, the Massachusetts Alternative Septic System Technology Center, is the recipient of almost $2 million to upgrade their facility and what they can do in terms of research and development. That's an interesting topic that is way beyond my subject matter expertise, and I would think that you might maybe someday want Brian Baumgartel to come and talk about what goes on there, because that center is nationally and even world known for the technology that they're working on. So that's $2 million. All right, so there's more lab upgrades in the health department. There's $237,000 for harmful algae bloom assessment project. So to basically upgrade the freshwater monitoring of that algae. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Algae.
We got you.
GAC. All right, so that's something that I think that all the towns will benefit from. Then they're gonna do basically a test to see what it would be like to have an epidemiologist for the county to help any of the 15 towns with information about communicable diseases and surveillance. So that's a contract for $60,000 to see if that's something they want to have in the future. Again, that would be a benefit to all the health departments. Let's see. Up $399,000 for county emergency preparedness upgrade project. So there's going to be a radio station, some restocking of all the regional shelters, And, yeah, so a radio station is kind of interesting, just in case people don't have any kind of power. There'd be some access to that station in emergencies. I don't know much about how that's gonna really work, but it's something to be aware of. I don't think it's gonna take that long to get that underway. So $285,000 for a community health nursing program needs assessment. See, Cape Cod Commission will tell you their own $400,000 when you get to her. Yes?
Randy, I think
Randy,
Lori has a
I
question.
had a question.
Please.
Going back to several items, you mentioned a line item where PFAS was historically located, or is this more of a,
No, where it might be located.
where it might be located?
Right, based
So
on
it's kind of
prior,
a
yeah.
source identification for maybe other locations that have been impacted, is that?
Yeah, would you like me to read what the description of that is one more
Briefly, if
time?
you don't
A little
mind,
bit?
please.
No, I don't mind at all. I didn't know how boring I was, so let's see. Okay, so a sum not to exceed $829,000 for a PFAS identification and analysis program project. They're gonna assess environmental conditions and factors across Barnstable County to determine the extent of PFAS contamination in public drinking water supplies, private wells, and other water resources across the region, utilizing reconnaissance techniques to establish the severity of impact across the Cape. Then they're gonna develop and apply specific sampling protocols, establish and implement a public education and communication program for Barnstable County residents regarding drinking water, public health information, work with Barnstable County Department of Health and Environment, town agencies to help identify likely water source locations of PFAS contamination, fuel spills, manufacturing locations, etc., throughout the municipal and historical record searches and interviews with individuals that may have specialized or historical knowledge. There's more, but does
No,
that?
do you have any idea how that might be prioritized? But 800,000 is a lot of money,
Yeah.
but in municipal dollars, it's not a lot of money. So, I mean, if you're covering the whole Cape, that could be chewed up pretty quickly.
It could, and Sean O'Brien is the Health Department Director, and I know Judy Giorgio corresponds with him a lot, so she might be able to give you more information, but I don't want to obligate her, but I know that Sean would come and talk to you about that.
All right, thank you.
He's very personable, or he would, come remotely.
All right, perfect, thank you.
Yeah, but, yeah, so anyway, let's see. Then there's gonna be, a housing coordinator for the 15 towns to try to coordinate, all the municipalities where their focus is on community coordination and engagement, inventory management and compliance, and program development, all with regard to housing. So a lot of these seem like they're just trying to consolidate, and you have like one point person on important topics.
This is the 12A you're talking about right now. This is the.
Correct,
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
So I guess the message for us is how do we get in line for some of the stuff that dovetails exactly what we're trying to do here in town?
Right.
Housing, PFAS, location, et cetera. to
Oh,
Corey's
how do you
earlier
reach
point.
out, and who do you reach out to, and how do you find out? But I think they're gonna reach out to you,
Okay,
yeah.
Okay.
And then you should be able to depend on me for that.
okay, yeah, good, Randy. Well,
Yeah. So,
Well, a lot of it does, just to overstate the obvious, a lot of it does really dovetail with all of the issues we have here in Chatham, as you
No
well
doubt.
know. Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah,
big-
because
big time.
housing and water quality is Cape-wide, and those were the priorities for the $40 million. So you can probably tell that just by what I've told you. So as far as the budget right now, last year, as you may recall, the commissioners gave us a budget for the 12% increase. This year, there's been a lot of decreases because the Registry of Deeds, which is our main source of funding, has indicated that they don't think this coming up year will be as good. So everybody needs to buckle up, on their budget. And so what's happened is some of the budget cuts, reductions that have been handed to the Assembly now for our evaluation have to do with vulnerable populations, one being Children's Cove, another being the SHINE program. And there's other ones like that. And so the Assembly feels very strongly that, you know, a government is judged by how it treats its most vulnerable citizens. And so when you think about abused, physically and sexually abused children, cutting any funding for that is just not acceptable. Cutting any funding for seniors to try to maneuver the healthcare system is not acceptable. So we're working right now to try to put back some of these funds, and I know we will. We're in the process, rob Peter to pay Paul, but we have plenty of other things that we're gonna try to put the money back. And what I wanna basically let you know is that I was able to speak with Chief Anderson, with Leah Lacrosse, and with Dr. Robert Duncanson, and they were extremely helpful in attending some of our committee meetings, and they still will and would, you know, if need be, to make it known that these cuts are not acceptable. And as far as Dr. Duncanson, you probably wonder where he fits in. He fits in with cuts to buy fresh, buy local, and anything to do with extension. So they were extremely receptive to me. I was dazzled by their professionalism and their willingness to participate. And so I just want to publicly state that. As far as the dredge goes, so I'm almost done. So lastly, the dredge. The dredge is under a lot of financial stress right now because many towns, not Chatham, have had a lot of trouble with their permits. And we're on it. And we're committed to support the dredge no matter what it takes. And this year, what it's taken is $845,000 subsidy out of the budget, which is not a usual thing for the dredge because it's supposed to be pretty much self-funding. But because of the problems with permitting and the fact that the rates need to go up, but we're not going to hit you with that this year. But it's something that it's a known fact that the rates need to go up. And there's a consultant that's going to come on board to pretty much decide how to keep the dredge funding appropriately. So with that, I will take any questions. I hope I didn't bore you too much.
No, not at all, Randy. It was a good update. And the dredge has been, you know, up and down, sideways, et cetera, for a number of years now. And you've had consultants in, and we've taken a kind of a sideways look at having our own in some frustration, but knowing it's extremely expensive and it's expensive to maintain and to staff, we backed off. However, we're very interested in successful operations of the county dredge and support it. As you well know, we support it to a fairly well, especially with Stage Harbor and other areas in town. So anyway, and we have a talented staff that is able to get permits and has been able to get
That's
permits.
right,
So,
that's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
I was able to meet up with Ted Keon, and
Yep.
not only is he an asset to having your permits in place on a regular basis, but he's also helped the county by being the chairman of committee with all the 15 towns, and he's actually also chair of an ad hoc committee, so
Yep.
he's worked hard to help the whole region.
Yeah, okay, Randy, thank you. Questions for Randy or comments from the select board members? Corey, no? Mike, you okay? Mike, Mr. Shell, yep.
Yeah, really not a question for you, but thanks very much. That was very comprehensive, exciting. Thank you. You prompt a question for our staff. What's the timing and what's the focus? And can we maybe be next to last as opposed to last in terms of getting our application in for our specifically designated ARPA funds?
So, Mr. Chair, we've had a conversation with the select board, I think it was back in January, about how to utilize the ARPA funds, and we're looking at that internally. We actually have until December of 2024, but now that the warrant's closed, the budget's done, that's going to be our priority moving forward for the next month, is to identify what to apply for our funds that are earmarked for the town of Chatham.
So noted. We'll get it on the agenda, Michael. Got it, we got it, yep. Yep. Mr. Nacastro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, I do have a comment. Thank you, Randy, for the presentation. I'm glad you brought up the Children's Cove and the Shine program, and I just really wanted to commend you for fighting to get those refunded. They're really important. As you know, I'm liaison to the Council on Aging. The chair of the council is very active in the Shine program as a volunteer, so as I'm sure you know. So thank you for your efforts in that regard. Thanks.
No, I'm glad to do it.
Ms. Davis?
Thanks, Randy. That was a very exciting report. I appreciate it.
all right.
Heard of a couple of the items, especially, there's feedback here.
It's never exciting when someone reads something.
Yeah,
It's
it's
just a
okay.
bad idea, it's bad, but I mean, I couldn't have memorized all that, I'm not quite that bright, so.
Brian from the Mass TC.
Yes,
He made a presentation to the Cape and Islands Select Board just recently. It was really informative, and I think it would be really great to have him come along and do something. Can you remind me again, maybe this question's for Jill, what do we, or maybe it is for you, Randy, what do we qualify on that 345,000?
you mean, what can you use it for?
Yeah, what can we use it for?
You can, well, initially, you could only, you
Housing.
couldn't use it for services, for, what do you call it, government services, but now you can. So you can, Jill will tell you what you can use
Yeah,
it for.
it's pretty general now because it's under, I think, the revenue replacement
Right.
section that allows us not necessarily to replenish revenue, but to use it for other municipal uses. So there's a few categories. I don't have it in front of me. I know Alex is here. She can just list
No,
them for us.
just a comment as well, I think Randy really freed up those monies to allow all municipal purposes. So,
Well, I was
well, you were
part of
helpful,
Yes.
you signed on to it, and you were helpful in pushing it, so Randy, thank you.
Yeah, originally it was just for water, wastewater, broadband, et cetera, and then with Randy's prompting and help, it was expanded to be revenue replacement, so it can be really used for any municipal purpose. The only thing that it cannot be used for was premium pay.
Right.
Okay. So thanks for that advocacy. I remember hearing about that. And also for your advocacy around Shine and the Children's Cove. Those are really
There's
important
more.
programs.
Those are just two, I didn't,
Yeah.
there are others as well.
Yeah.
That, you know, we're on it, and we're gonna take money out of our own assembly budget if we have to.
Okay.
Because that's the other thing, leaders should eat last. You know, you don't cut other budgets
Yeah.
and not your own. So, I just want to, again, refer you to that letter from Vera Harik about, because she doesn't think you have until 2024 in her mind, so,
Oh, okay.
yeah, so.
Yeah, it was in our
just-
package. It was
it's just a
actually in our
warning,
package, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
And, okay.
We got
So-
it, we got
All
it.
right, so we'll see
Thank
you
you.
next time.
Randy, thank you very much for your time and your
Oh,
efforts on
thank you.
behalf of Chatham
Thank you.
and on behalf of Barnstable County. Doing a great job. Okay, next up, we have Cape Cod Commission update. We have Christy Senatori here. Christy, welcome.
Good
Hi,
evening.
Christy.
It's nice to see you all.
Nice to see you.
Thanks for the opportunity to be here this evening. I'm Christy Senatori, the Executive Director of the Cape Cod Commission. And I'm here tonight joined by Sarah Colvin. She's our Communications Manager. So any follow-up after this meeting, we'd be happy to provide documentation or information. And I'm also here with Tom Wilson, who, as you all know, is the Cape Cod Commission representative appointed from your board from the town of Chatham. And I really can't thank Tom enough for his hard work and his dedication to the commission and to making those difficult decisions. He's been extremely busy as a member of many subcommittees and the full commission. And if it's okay with the chair, I'd like to have an opportunity to make sure that Tom has a chance to make some remarks at the end of
Yeah,
my
absolutely.
comments. Great,
You bet,
thank
you bet.
And then following, of course, Delegate Potash, who is also the Deputy Speaker of the Assembly of Delegates, I wanted to recognize all of her hard work and her efforts and really her prioritization of housing and water quality on behalf of the Assembly as critical issues for Cape Cod. So, as many of you know, from time to time, I do visit all 15 towns, really as an opportunity to provide some updates, answer some questions, and just keep those lines of communication open. So I'm visiting the 14 boards of selectmen in the Barnstable Town Council across the Cape. So I've just handed out a couple of items, and the first is our 2022 year in review, which I want to emphasize isn't a comprehensive look at everything we did last year, but it provides a high-level overview of some of the highlights of our work. But tonight I want to focus on just three critical issue areas for Cape Cod, which have come up, not surprisingly, a couple of times already tonight, but water quality, coastal resiliency and climate change, and then, of course, housing. And then I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Before I go into those details, though, as Delegate Potash was mentioning, the funding for projects through the county ARPA funds, we were allocated some resources through those individual projects to the different departments and agencies within the county, of funding to conduct a broadband needs assessment. So within the course of the next several weeks, we'll be bringing a consultant on board, hopefully, to help us with a needs assessment and analysis of need for broadband across the Cape. We saw this issue really exacerbated during COVID, and we want to get a better understanding of where some of those gaps in service are so that we can then develop strategies, whether they're on a sub-regional or regional basis, for addressing our potential needs here in the case of broadband. So switching just really briefly to water quality. In terms of water quality, of course, coastal water quality efforts have been significantly increasing across the Cape. Communities are making progress in addressing nitrogen impairments. And towns are taking advantage of available funding and financing. We're seeing our 208 plan that we developed several years ago now being implemented. And as you know, the Cape Cod Commission provides administrative and technical support to the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund Management Board. And I want to thank, of course, Dr. Bob Duncanson for his time in serving on that board. Just last year alone, the Water Protection Fund awarded nearly $28 million in subsidies for water quality projects and wastewater projects across the Cape. And to date, that fund has awarded over nearly $100 million in grants. We're pleased, of course, to see that Chatham's been awarded or has had access to about $15 million in grants to support wastewater projects as well as pre-existing debt. And I believe there's a project listed on the draft intended use plan for this year. So we're pleased to see our towns taking advantage of this important resource. So shifting gears to freshwater, we are also pleased that we received funding to initiate our freshwater project, so our freshwater initiative. And that began last year with an update to our pond and lake atlas. So this really does provide us with an important set of baseline data and information on the status of the ponds across the Cape, across the region. Of the 890 ponds that we do have here in the region, less than 10% are monitored. So this limited availability of data is really preventing our ability to gather a clear understanding of pond health across the region. So we're really looking to make sure that we have consistent and consecutive data collection to inform some of the pond management strategies that we would be developing as part of that freshwater initiative. So the freshwater initiative we'll work with all 15 towns. We've already begun this process working with our staff and with staff across the 15 communities. But we'll also be working more broadly with stakeholders across the region, with local and regional pond organizations. There are many pond groups, of course Chatham has many as well, that are engaged on this issue, and we want to make sure that we've got the right people in the room to identify some of the effective pond management strategies so that we can really look forward to improvements to pond health over the course of the next several years. So shifting a little bit from water quality, of course, this is tied also to climate change, coastal resiliency efforts that we've been doing. So we're continuing to implement our climate action plan and developing tools and resources for the 15 communities. As of this year, we'll have initiated our low-lying roads project in all 15 towns across the Cape. We're pleased to continue to work with the town of Chatham as we move into phase 2 of that project. We've also developed a series of model bylaws as they relate to climate change and coastal resiliency. Some of these include our large-scale solar model bylaw, electric vehicle charging station infrastructure model bylaws, as well as a comprehensive set of floodplain design guidelines. So really making sure that we are able to develop tools and resources that the 15 communities can use and can adopt. And then shifting to housing, one of our other kind of critical issues, as you may or may not know, the Commission has begun work on a regional housing strategy so that we can address housing supply, affordability, and availability issues, identifying areas that are appropriate for potential additional housing development. So one of the other items I handed out was a profile for housing across the region. So we've developed these for all 15 towns, as well as one that's more comprehensive for the entirety of Barnstable County. It's really an opportunity for us to share some baseline information with each of the towns to start those conversations. The median sales price for a single-family home last year was about $690,000 Cape-wide. The estimated annual household income that would be needed to affordably purchase that median sales price single-family home is $210,000, which is significantly higher than the Cape's median income of about $82,000. This, of course, varies from town to town across the Cape, but this combined with the lack of available homes, the lack of diversity in the market, given that 82% of our homes on the Cape are single-family homes, and that 30% of our homes are already seasonal homes, really is providing, it really means that affordable, attainable housing is only getting further and further out of reach. So as part of the housing plan, as part of the regional housing strategy, we'll be preparing a needs assessment. We're working with a consultant to capture some additional information about projections moving into the future, as well as working with stakeholders across the region. So that began also with conversations with all 15 communities, with all 15 towns over the past several months, really getting a sense of some of the challenges that the towns are facing, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and where some of those needs are. Our stakeholder process will broaden now over the course of the next few months, where we'll be working with sub-regional stakeholder groups to really understand more broadly what those challenges are, but then discuss some of the solutions that we can implement and at what scale it makes sense to implement those. So we'll be working with a broad variety of stakeholders to develop that regional housing strategy. And then lastly, I just wanted to mention, I know some of you were there at our One Cape Summit last year that we held last summer. We are going to be holding a One Cape Summit again this year, and we're underway with some planning for that, and we'll be releasing more information in the next month or two. I think that's all I have for updates, but I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I did just want to give Tom Wilson an opportunity to provide some remarks, if that's okay with you.
Sure, Mr. Wilson. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm happy to be here. And I want to say how grateful I am to be Chatham's representative to the Cape Cod Commission, to work with a group that goes forward in addressing all the pressing issues that we have here on the Cape is really quite rewarding for me, and I'm grateful that you have faith in me to be our representative. As Christy mentioned, things like the regional housing, freshwater pond water quality, all of those issues, the Cape Cod Commission is at the forefront in preserving what we have here on the Cape for today and for tomorrow. Things like the low-lying roads project as part of the climate action plan are going to be key here in Chatham too. I learn a tremendous amount serving as your representative to the commission. What I most enjoy is the development of regional impact review process. I raise my hand and volunteer as often as I can to serve on subcommittees that are the first step in a DRI review. So a subcommittee of 5 members of the commission will hold a series of public hearings where an applicant in a development of regional impact will make a presentation. The staff from the Cape Cod Commission with their technical expertise and amazing backgrounds will deliver a report. We'll have a public hearing where the public is able to comment on how they feel about this application and how it might affect them. And then we have commission discussion and questions and answers. And one of the highlights of that is that as we go through this series of meetings and have questions, there'll be a follow-up subcommittee hearing. We're actually able to make some suggestions in terms of conditions that might be included in any agreement with the applicant. And I find that rewarding. I love being in the atmosphere of collecting public input and working with the public to come up with the best program possible. Our goal as a subcommittee and as a commission is to determine that the benefits of a development of regional impact outweigh the detriments and that the overall project aligns with our regional policy plan. And the commission staff does an excellent job of guiding us along those steps. The interesting part is that we can only make our decisions based on what we hear in the public hearings. And that makes a lot of sense. It keeps things clean and even and well-balanced. And so I'm so grateful to serve in that position. Some of the subcommittees that I've been on have looked at things like wind power and bringing the power on shore into Barnstable. There was a solar project, large scale in Dennis. There was a market that was going to go on Falmouth Road. There are such a variety of issues that come before the commission. Again, thank you very much for allowing me to serve.
Super, thank you, Tom. It sounds like you're really engaged. Now, did you guys review the Twin Brooks down in Hyannis, the development there in Hyannis?
Absolutely.
Were you part of the subcommittee that took a look at that, Tom? And the DRI?
I was not on that
That one,
subcommittee,
okay, yeah.
but I had been on others about.
And the commission weighed in how, Christie, on that one? You might refresh my ever-dwindling memory?
That was a project that went through the Cape Cod Commission's development agreement. It's currently under appeal, so I'm not going to make any further
Okay, all
comments
right, I
at the
just
moment.
was kind of wondering where it was, and it's a notable one, that's for sure.
Yes.
And game changer, actually, down there in Hyannis. Potential game changer. Okay. Christie, any questions for Christie or comments? That we always enjoy this update. You're hitting all the hot button items, that's for sure. And across the Cape and most, especially here in Chatham. Mr. Nicastro and then Ms. Davis, we'll go around the horn here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Christie. Thanks, Tom. I'm glad you brought up the DRIs. That was an interesting explanation. I'm sure there's a definition of DRI somewhere in your guiding documents, but what triggers the review? What requires someone to have to file?
So there are several thresholds within our commission regulations that are stemming from the Cape Cod Commission Act that would trigger a commission review. So for example, if it's a commercial structure greater than 10,000 square feet, that's something that once you apply for a permit at the local level, it would get referred to the Cape Cod Commission as a mandatory referral. There are a variety of other thresholds as well, but those types of projects would trigger review, and it would, the process at the local level would be stayed until the commission made a decision on that particular proposed project.
So that square footage example perhaps applied in the case with the market that Tom was talking about?
Yes, likely.
Okay, thanks.
Ms. Davis?
First off, Tom, thank you for all your good work, and I love that you're so enthusiastic by it. My question is for Christie. Thank you and welcome, Christie. On the housing regional housing strategies, who are your partners in working on this regional sort of approach?
So we have a number of partners that we're working with. We have a number of stakeholders, different organizations across the Cape that we're working with, and we've just brought on a consultant, UTIL, to help us with several of the components within that regional housing strategy. So looking at design guidelines, specifically considerations for net zero. We're looking at a comprehensive zoning analysis, as well as a variety of other things. If you flip to the back of that sheet, there's some high-level components of what goes into the regional housing strategy, and we're working with our consultant on some of those. But our stakeholder group and our list of organizations that we're working with is comprehensive, and it's not necessarily just housing advocates. We want to make sure that we have a variety of stakeholders at the table to have these important conversations about the potential need and location and types of housing that make sense for the Cape. And we know that that's going to vary from community to community.
Thank you.
Any other comments for Christie? We have a pretty active, correct me if I'm wrong, somebody, but folks, is it the waterways folks that test our ponds, that go out and hopefully that, the Friends, okay, so hopefully that data gets bubbled up and that Chatham's ponds are included in your database of water quality for ponds.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. And we do have a comprehensive database of water quality monitoring, and we want to expand on that, and certainly working with partners, and including Friends of Chatham Waterways is important.
Okay, super. Okay. All right, super. Thank you, Christie. Thank you, Tom. Good job.
Thank you very much.
Good to see you, yep. Okay, next item on our agenda is support for SD 1040, right to impose year-round occupancy restrictions. And I'm going to turn towards Select Board members Shereen Davis to introduce this one and give us some background and what's she looking for. Ms. Davis.
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in your packet today, you had a draft letter to support the SD 1040. I did a brief overview of it when I introduced the agenda item request, but I wanted to go over it again, if you don't mind.
Please.
The reasoning behind it. But first off, the letter is for the Joint Committee on Housing, who will be looking at SD 1040, which is legislative proposal. It's an act relevant to year-round housing occupancy, and it was proposed by Senator Sear and supported by Sarah Rep. Peak. It was developed by select board members in Plymouth. My daughter lives in Plymouth, Provincetown and Nantucket, and the legislation was written by their town council, who happens, I hope he doesn't mind, to be a resident of the town of Chatham. Anyway, some of the notes that came up in light of why this legislation was written was we have a housing crisis, obviously, on the Cape, and it's displacing households making $100,000 or less, which is much of our workforce. The Cape will be continuing to lose, I think we lose something like 829 households annually in this income range due to the lack of attainable housing. And approximately 48% of our, or like 42,000 members of our Cape workforce commute to work from off Cape. So we know that Chatham's building housing development. We still need to address that displacement. We know that developments are addressing the typical 80% area medium income, which are households from the size of one at $60,900 to a family of four at $86,950. But again, you're asking what about the people that are making over the 80% AMI? And they are often referred to as the missing middle, and they are typically professional services, healthcare workers, first responders, municipal employees, and members of the hospitality industry. So a year-round deed restriction would be an important tool to help the missing middle. This is how I'm feeling, to stabilize some of the housing market, some of the housing that we need. This would be a tool in our toolbox and would help to build out that year-round inventory. This legislation will codify housing deed restrictions in perpetuity without any AMI restrictions. And so basically, I think I went over where this lands in Mass General Law. It's Chapter 184. And the legislation addresses issues within that section 26, 31, and 32, which section 26 outlines the restrictions for similar to the use of land use issues with conservation and agricultural restrictions. SD 1040 would just add the language to include the year-round housing occupancy restriction to that list. With section 31, it will define the restriction of the year-round deed restriction. And section 2032 is a focus on the effect, the enforcement, acquisition, and release of the restriction. So that would be filled in by that language. So this is straightforward legislation that will give us the ability to create our own year-round deed restricted housing. This is like a lot of words. I wish there was a better way to describe it. Year-round deed housing occupancy restriction program. And obviously, each town will be able to do a little boutique sort of own bylaws but this is legislation that's going to allow it. So the letter of support is here, and I've asked you to consider it for that we allow the chair to sign the letter. fill in the dates and what the vote was, and send it up the chain with a CC to our delegation, our entire Cape delegation. And then the next steps, I think, is for us as a town to start looking at what that sort of bylaw would look like for us. Provincetown has already submitted a home rule petition. I think Nantucket has. I talked to the folks over in Orleans. They're drafting language right now. And as I had said in the past, when I presented this before, the Cape and Islands Municipal Leadership Association resoundingly approved this program, this legislation, and sent a letter of support to the Housing Joint Committee on Housing. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Shereen. Now, I assume that the CCs, our delegation, is all in favor?
Yes. Yeah.
Both senators from the Cape and all our state reps?
Yes.
And I'm certainly in favor. And this letter would signal our approval or our support for this act. It doesn't mean it's going to happen yet, but it's
Right.
certainly support for the act, so.
Right.
Mr. Metters.
Just a question, actually, because I want to make sure I understand this properly. So we had a conversation not too long ago with like, as an example, the chop houses. They had deed restrictions on them. They expired. We sat down with staff and we were looking at different mechanics about how do we try to preserve those. And at the time, we really didn't have a mechanism to recapture those. Would this be a tool that we could use toward recapturing those kind of project, or is this totally separate?
Well, the way this is written, it would be totally different. This would be, basically, the idea is, let's take when open space buys land in we acquire land in Chatham and we put a conservation deed restriction on it. Usually that's a vote. We purchase the land with certain funds, and then it is, restricted for,
That
forever.
category, yep.
So this would be a program where, and it could be very beneficial to some people on fixed incomes, or incentivize people to really think about not selling, well, let's put it this way, I don't want to incentivize people for not selling to certain people, but basically it would allow the opportunity for the town to put together a program. I don't want to really identify it because I think that's the discussion, but to create a purchasing program to purchase a deed restriction on a year-round house that would keep it year-round without an AMI, without an affordable, medium income restriction. So, Corey, if you were, let's just say if, your neighbor has a house and they want to see that it stays year-round, there would be perhaps a program in town that would allow us to pay a certain amount of money to put that restriction on that home. That's the program that we would be building. This legislation actually just codifies and says, hey, towns, you can go ahead and do this.
Allows us to do it.
Allows us to do it, and it also, not even towns, but it can also private entities do it, or nonprofits do it as well.
And one follow-up, is the timing of how we can act on this quicker than past actions? Because when we're dealing with, trying to get municipal entities trying to get deed restrictions or buying property, whatever, we always get bogged down in the process and it takes longer than it should, so we lose out on these things. Is there mechanisms in this language or in this model that would have some urgency in letting us act, that we don't lose out on what our goals are?
So the beauty of it is that we can build this model to be what we need to have for the town. But there would be, an active town meeting that we'd have to create. There would have to be a funding mechanism, and there'd have to be a program set up. But once that's all done, either the Housing Trust can look at this, maybe staff can look at this. This is a lottery system, or however, that, the municipality can go ahead and do it efficiency. So it wouldn't be, I don't imagine what it would look like. I think what we need to do is have community development come in and our housing specialists come in and say, look, this is what we've seen in other towns, in other areas of the country. This is how they do it, and how does that fit for Chatham?
All right, thank you.
Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Meadows. Any other comments? Mr. Shell?
Just a question, kind of a follow-up to what Corey was asking. Does that, are we saying that basically if the legislation passes before this can be implemented in Chatham, we would need a bylaw?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
And we can go ahead and start that process now. This is just legislation that's is overarching, so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, and I mean, this is a conversation that's going on in a lot of different contexts around Chatham, including in the planning board discussion of the West Chatham neighborhood zoning conversation. So it's obviously timely, and it seems consistent with the thinking that is being exhibited in those conversations. I do have one question about the language of the letter. In the last paragraph on the page, it says Chatham is building affordable housing. I think we're kind of at the front end of that, but that, I don't.
Poised to build.
Something like that, or is planning to, or whatever. I'm not going to wordsmith it, but
I'm sure it's fine to make that adjustment to the letter.
that's all.
It would.
Thank you. And thank you very much for bringing this forward. It's a very important initiative.
Yeah, thank you,
Thanks,
Mr.
yeah.
Shell, for that, and thank you, Ms. Davis, you bet. Okay, a motion, please.
I would move that we authorize the chair to sign this letter as drafted with an appropriate amendment, as I suggested.
And I'll second, okay. Mr. Meadows?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Thank you very much. Okay, our next item on our agenda is an executive session. Typically, I turn to Mr. Nacastro to read this motion. Mr. Nacastro?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the Select Board go into executive session under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21, Number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, parentheses, Chatham Municipal Employees Association, close parentheses. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body, and the chair so declares, with no return to open session.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, thank you, and we'll poll the committee, the Select Board, I should say. Mr. Meadows?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
And Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Okay, thank you, folks. Good night, Chatham. Thank you.